You are the Chief Technology Officer at Connexus. Do you want to start off just by telling us what Connexus is?
Yeah, sure. So should we wait until the...
Yeah, maybe if we could have the conversations in the hallway, that would be great, because it's very echoey.
Fantastic. So we tried to stack the audience with JP Morgan people, which is cool. So let's see if we can get as many JP Morgan people in the front row as possible. And please clap on demand. So that's cool. So Connexus is the JP Morgan distributed ledger platform for the bank. We've been at it for quite some time. This is the 10th year that we've been doing this. So we're not newbies in this space at all.
Okay, so my first question is, we are at Permissionless. It says it in big letters on the sign. Why should we care about permissioned blockchains at Permissionless?
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm always happy to do a session on permissioned versus non-permissioned in a conference called Permissionless. So that's cool. So, let's take a little bit of a step back. When we talk about banking is in a highly regulated environment, right? And I think many of the speakers that preceded us talk about, all of the challenges that we've had with, banks and regulations and so forth. And to a large degree, those are not willy-nilly regulations. They're meant to protect the consumer at the end of the day. And, when we started the journey, being a highly regulated entity in a highly regulated market, we needed to make a decision as to whether we wanted to be in a unpermissioned network, so a public chain or mainnet, or we wanted to be in a permissioned network. So the way that we describe what we've done in JP Morgan to date is that we're in a private permissioned network. And that made sense for us, especially in terms of the interaction that we've had with regulators and our clients, and it gave that level of safety and rigor to the transactions that we were doing. So that was where we started. I think that we made a big announcement over the last couple of days on the 23rd, where we mentioned that we are going into public chain. So I think that is a seminal change in terms of the bank's thinking, and that's a direct result of some of the regulations that have moved in favor of the crypto market and the blockchain market over the last 2-3 months. So I think that we will try to establish the same level of rigor that we've done in terms of the permissioned networks in the permissionless networks or the public chain.
Okay, I want to get to the public chain in a minute, but the permissioned chain that you're referring to, is that Link? Is that correct?
Great question. I didn't answer your question, what is Connexus? So let me just take a little bit of a step back and talk about what is Connexus. So initially, Connexus also, it was the artist formerly known as Onyx, and previous to that, it was the artist formerly known as IIN, Interbank Information Network. So, it was interesting. One of the previous speakers that you had up here was Christine Moy, who was my business partner for a long period of time before she ditched me to go to work for Apollo. But when we started, and as I mentioned, our journey has been for the past 10 years or so. When we started, our value proposition was to do exploration. And we thought that the best way to do that was to create a network of banks. For those of you who don't follow correspondent banking and all of that, the intricacies around that, JP Morgan has the largest correspondent banking network in the world. We are somewhere on the order of about 3,000 banks. And what does that mean? It means that in conjunction with SWIFT, that's how we move money. And we felt that there was a great need to remove friction from that money movement. And we thought that very specifically, the network of banks that we could bring on board, including us for that matter, would benefit tremendously from the reduction not only in the operational inefficiencies of that system, but actually make the customer experience much better. So toward that end, we created something at that time, it was called the Interbank Information Network. It comprised 100 banks and 400 banks that we signed letters of intent to. So, the view that we had there was, as I said, to remove inefficiencies. And we could have done all 3,000 banks, and the only reason we didn't do that is that we were trying to create value from the processes before we started onboarding the other banks. So, as we evolved, we realized that people were much less interested in sort of the core movement of money and much more interested in specifically in the information that money was being moved on. So they were interested in things like payment validation, confirmation of the payment messages, the AML KYC aspects of that money movement. So Link, which was one of the platforms that we developed in Connexus, we thought that would be the mechanism for that for the evaluation of that information. So it's actually a little bit of a change in sort of direction for us in terms of looking at not looking at core processes, but looking at the information that surrounds that, or the ecosystem around that process itself. So that was very interesting to us. Now, the way Connexus itself is structured is that we have a network, or a platform rather. On top of that platform, we have multiple networks, and on top of those networks, we have business applications. So, I mentioned to you folks that, we've been around a bit, and what's not well known is that we are not doing any proof of concepts or anything like that, right? I mean, we may do proof of concepts in order to prove a singular point in terms of adding business value, but all of our work is done on a production platform. So let me give you some numbers which don't impress anybody, not even my wife, but I think it just gives you some context, is that we run somewhere on the order of about $1.5 trillion on this platform, notional on this platform. 1.5 trillion, right? That's not a B, that's a T, 1.5 trillion, right? We do about $1 billion worth of payment work and payment transactions on this platform per day. So this is not when we speak about a production level platform, this is a production level platform. So there are other entities that are, and I'll use the word, and a little bit of arrogance in terms of like talking about our bank, but there are other platforms, other entities that are, similar sized banks, which are to a large extent Johnny-come-latelys in this field. We have lived and breathed this every day, and from the beginning, we have worked with the industry stalwarts such as Joe Lubin and Vitalik and so forth in terms of developing our thinking behind what we're doing. So that's a little bit about Connexus and a little bit about permission networks itself, and a little bit about Link as well.
Okay, so that was $1.5 trillion moving on a permissioned blockchain?
Yes, $1.5 trillion notional on that platform. Notional means the actual dollar value.
And that's moving between JP Morgan customers?
So when we talk about the network and the applications, we have one payments network and one capital markets network. Our intraday repo platform does $1.5 trillion between clients as well as JP Morgan.
Okay, so maybe this is a good segue to the recent news about JPMD, because that is going to move on a public blockchain.
Yes.
Is that correct? So why? If you have your permission blockchain and you're moving all that money on it, why would you need a coin on a public chain?
No, definitely. I think that, when you think about, banks and distributed ledger platforms and so forth, it seems anathema between the two. Sort of a dichotomy between looking at, sort of the reason why blockchain came up and why, a company like JP Morgan is there. One should not exist if the other exists. At least that's what the popular view was. I would take a little bit of a step back and say, the whole reasons bank exists is because of a matter of trust, right? Is that people need banks because they're moving money and they want that level of trust and that removal of ambiguity between parties. So when we first started in terms of the blockchain work and the distributed ledger work, we thought that was best served using distributed ledger. Distributed ledger in a private permission network. I think now, as the regulations have fallen and our experience over the last 10 years has shown us, is that we can secure these transactions even in a public-facing network or a public chain. Now, the JP Morgan coin was really used as nothing more than a book transfer mechanism, right? It was a way of making sure that we can move money in a concise, clear way within the bank remit. JP Morgan dollar is our view that we can actually connect into a public chain infrastructure, and using deposit tokens, we can actually move money through cross-border payments or through settlement using the mechanism of a public chain itself.
So what advantages does that have over doing it on your own chain?
So I would say a couple of things. So the other thing also is that, our view is that in this distributed environment as we're going forward, JP Morgan can't be the only entity that's there. We will have to work with partners. There's no question about it. And contrary to popular opinion, we welcome that partnership. We welcome actually working with other parties. And the public chain gives us an opportunity to work with startups, with other fintechs, in order to create that distributed environment where we actually are able to leverage all of the best in-class services from this ecosystem itself. So the view that we had is that the use of deposit tokens allows us to actually go into that or to participate within that distributed fintech environment.
Maybe tell us the difference between a deposit token and a stable coin.
Sure. So one thing I think is that, listening to some of the other speakers, I will quibble with them a bit if you would allow me to. One thing I think is that they speak a bit about it being an either-or type situation. It's neither either-or, right? It is we believe that both can coexist, deposit tokens as well as stable coins. And I think that, in the future, as business requirements dictate, I think there may be an opportunity for us to participate in stablecoins as well. I think that the fundamental difference right now between stablecoins and what we're doing is that one, stablecoins are not under the regulatory framework of banks. So if you have Circle, Tether, and so forth, they are non-bank entities that can issue stablecoins, whereas deposit tokens are under the regulatory framework of banks, which gives them a greater level of security. Also, you can do things such as you can create interest-type instruments for for deposit tokens as well. So I think that regulatory framework that's within the banking environment with all of the bells and whistles that protect consumers is around the deposit tokens. The stable coins are, again, issued by non-bank entities.
Okay, why would we need stablecoins though? If we have deposit tokens, what advantage do stablecoins have?
So I think this goes back to there are some folks that want to participate in an unbanked, that are unbanked, that want to participate in an environment where they're not subject to some blank regulations, right, for whatever reason. So whether they don't have the ability to interact with the banking institutions and so forth, that gives them that greater level of flexibility in terms of stable coins, which is fine. I mean, I think that's there. I think the trick of it is going forward is that, again, going back to what I mentioned before around that trust and safety, I think that when you're dealing with stable coins, we do have to figure out what that mechanism is for KYC, AML, and so forth. For whatever reason, right, and I think most of the people in the audience know, for whatever reason, this space attracts a lot of bad actors. And the bad actors not only put themselves at risk, but put all of us at risk in terms of how money moves.
So JPMD will be a permissioned coin on a permissionless network?
That's a great way of saying it. I would say that JP Morgan dollar, JPMD, would be is a deposit token that is going to connect to public chain. And I think the primary use cases in and around that right now are around, as I mentioned, the two primary ones are around cross-border payments as well as settlement of securities.
Okay, earlier when you were talking about Link, I think you referred to collective intelligence.
Yeah.
Does that still apply to?
No, definitely, and that's excellent that you actually brought that up. So, when I was talking to our CIO one day, her name is Laurie Beer, she asked some of the technologists, what technology do you guys think is going to, win the day? So we all went about and we picked our favorite technologies. And I, of course, chose blockchain and distributed ledger and so forth. The best answer wasn't any singular technology. It's actually a confluence of technologies that come together. And I think that, and not to be, I just, sort of killed some of our competitors for being, Johnny-come-latelys, and not to be sort of Johnny-come-lately into the AI ML space. But if you really think about it, blockchains and distributed ledgers have a wealth of information, have a wealth of data, and that data is moving across the network. So it would almost be malpractice if we didn't use that data to help create customer value. So it's really a confluence of, the application of AI/ML on top of these types of blockchain networks and distributed ledgers to create business value and to create new business opportunities. And that is the collective intelligence that we're talking about. So, people talk about monitoring and logging. So if you're a technologist, right, and you think about, how, what are the things I'm interested in? I'm obviously interested in the mechanics of how a piece of code changes state, right? So I'm monitoring and logging in around that. I'm also interested in, if I'm a compliance officer, I'm interested if there's a bad actor that's somehow gotten into the system. If I'm a cybersecurity person, I'm interested in, is there something that is wrong with the transaction? Has somebody subverted the transactions themselves for dubious purposes? So all these types of monitoring require different types of intelligence that we're putting in place, and they can be facilitated through, and again, not Johnny-come-lately, but they can be facilitated through AI/ML in order to be able to try to be cohesive, at least from that perspective. And then you have the secondary set of use cases, as I mentioned, around creating business value through actually looking at how these transactions flow itself.
Okay, and if all of that is happening on a permissionless chain, will I be able to see what every JP Morgan customer is doing?
Absolutely. Right?
Really?
So I would say this is that I was seeing whether you're paying attention. So I would say this is that when we first created Quorum, which was our hard fork of Ethereum, one of the things that we put into play was a piece of code that was differentiated from Ethereum itself, and that was in and around the privacy module. The reason being is that there were the clients that were moving transactions really didn't want those transactions to be public, right? Now, as you rightly said, if we're going into a public chain or mainnet where everybody can see transactions as they go through, what is the privacy associated with that? And I think that that's one of the things that we're still working through, is what is the mechanism of privacy that needs to be associated with these transactions as they flow through. Because the last thing you want to do is somebody trying to re-engineer your transactions to be able to try to either get a competitive advantage, or, as I mentioned before, if there's a bad actor there, to be able to re-engineer transactions for nefarious purposes. So 100%, I think that privacy is paramount in how we're actually perceiving this as we go forward.
So how do you provide privacy on a public blockchain?
So I think that he's trying to reveal my secret sauce here as we're going through. I think that there's a couple of things that we can do. Now, some of this is that can we abstract the transactions to some degree? Can you abstract the ownership of these transactions, at least the intermediate transactions, so that they are hidden from view, so that somebody can't extrapolate back what a trading strategy could be. So if you really think about it, I know we have a few seconds left. One of the things that are really pushing forward one of the sort of pillars of capital markets is to be able to create trading strategies that give you a competitive advantage which no one else can see. Now, how do you actually do that same type of use case on a public chain? And I think that that's some of the things. We don't have all the answers, and maybe some of the folks in the audience here can help us develop those solutions, but I think that that's going to be one of the more challenging things as we go forward.
I think that's a good stopping place, actually.
Fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Let's thank Suresh Shetty.